So the book we're here to talk about today is Stop Doing That Sht. End Self-Sabotage and Demand Your Life Back by Gary John Bishop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you ordered a coffee? Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, what do you think about the library?
Unbelievable. It's, I mean, there's everything.
When does the book come into play?
Until it was pointed out, the narrative that you build in your head, this type of stuff doesn't exist. When I started to realize that I was self-sabotage, it was like it now existed. Now you can start to identify things.
We love talking about books that have changed people's lives, like had such an impact that they are different after reading the book. Today, our special guest is Justin Wenzel. So how does Stop Doing That by Gary John Bishop change your life? The struggle is real with this lighter. Thank you, though. Okay, so you ordered a coffee? That was your drink?
I did. Thank you.
Thanks, baby.
Tonic?
Cheers.
Cheers. This is really cool.
Yeah, what do you think about the library?
Unbelievable. It's, I mean, there's everything.
Can you tell that I have an inferiority complex or something, that I need to have more books than everybody?
I didn't look at it that way. No, just a great appreciation. I love the Virgil book over here, and then that massive, the massive Rolex book. I'm a huge Rolex fan.
Oh.
Huge. One of my close friends and a guy that I do business with, he's a orologist, Rolex specifically, and his father was. And he's told me like some really cool stories, and obviously he has a ton of knowledge because he rips those things apart and puts them back together all day. And
How many do you have?
I have 3 right now.
Which one's your favorite?
This one.
And what is it?
This is a rose gold
that's beautiful.
GMT root beer.
Beautiful. I love the contrast of the black and the rose.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite. And then I have an anniversary Kermit, and then I have the white gold Yachtmaster with the rubber one, the Oyster Flex band.
What do you think about the cigar?
Oh, it's fantastic.
So when you had your son, did you have that moment that people always say like, oh, I changed?
No.
No?
No. I put a little bit about my story in there, and I'm pretty outspoken about it, but I'm a recovering addict. And when he was born, I was like in the middle of it.
Oh.
You know, it was always like, up and down and up and down. And when he was born, I wasn't with his mother. We were like on again, off again. And it just wasn't a healthy relationship. And, I probably had no business having a child at the time. As the years went on, I was able to obviously get myself right and all of that stuff. And later on, now our relationship is a lot better.
Is he a lot like you?
Yes.
Is he playing sports, or what's he into?
He plays basketball.
Basketball?
Yeah.
What position?
I think he's a guard, shooting guard.
So he's fast?
Well, he's short and about as fast as a Greek Jew can get,
Okay, so the book we're here to talk about today is Stop Doing That End Self-Sabotage and Demand Your Life Back by Gary John Bishop. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up here?
I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Oh, wow.
Grew up in the auto industry. What's funny is that I'm very familiar. I was very familiar with you before I actually got into I Am Leader and this. My father is a car dealer, and I went to Northwood University and did that whole thing, and NADA and all of it.
What brand?
Buick GMC and Chevrolet.
Did you have any siblings?
I have a little brother.
A little brother?
Mm-hmm.
And so were you spending your summers in the dealership working nights?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Since I was really young, started selling cars young, and then I was in the auto industry all the way up until about 4 years ago when I started my marketing agency.
So what happens through that journey? So dad's a dealer, and you are the heir apparent. You're going to run it?
Yep. The oldest son, sent away to Northwood. you know the story, you know.
Yeah.
It's very common. Where they say PhD, Papa has a dealership.
Yep.
And yeah, you know, it was like kind of my like what I was supposed to be destined for. Everything was like always like, you know, he built it, and he's first generation.
Was he a pretty good dealer?
Huge. Number one Buick GMC in Michigan.
That's hard there because that's in the blood there.
Correct. Yeah, and we have Detroit Metro, Flint, and Grand Rapids.
What were the biggest takeaways from your relationship with your dad in that sense of business? Like, what did you learn from him?
So, you know, my dad and mom had me really young. And and he started off selling cars for a Chevy store in Grand Rapids. I watched him build everything. You know, he actually wasn't a very good car salesman. Got into finance, and then he had one opportunity to be a GM vice president, you know, variable ops director, if you will, in Portland, Maine. And that's where we bought our first, or he bought his first Chevy store.
How old were you?
We moved to Maine when I was 5.
5? So he buys one and then ends up acquiring 5 more?
Yep.
And how old are you when that happens?
Between 5 and 10.
5 and 10? Mm-hmm. So pretty fast.
Very fast.
So he was a good operator. He scaled pretty quick?
Yes. When things weren't so good is when I would have been in college at Northwood. And then obviously, you know, you had to survive that. If you remember back then, that was during the government bailout.
So then we're 2007, 2008?
Yep.
And you're in college then?
Yeah. Yep. Survive the bailout, survive all of that. You know, a lot of GM stores and Chrysler Dodge stores did not survive back then. We survived. And then it's funny, when I got out of school, my dad wouldn't hire me.
Why?
He wanted me to figure it out.
Do he want you to work for somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. That's old car dealer think.
Yeah. So I worked for a big auto group in Detroit.
What'd you do for him?
Sold cars.
Do you think selling cars is the most, well, let me ask that a different way. Do you think that you learn more by selling cars than probably anything else in automotive?
Yeah, in terms of, well, I think being in the box is probably where you learn the most.
Because you live and die by what happens. Mm-hmm. You start at 0. Mm-hmm. Like every other position has some sort of base or some sort of, you know, safety net, but you don't have that selling cars.
No.
And you can go all the way to the 15th and not have made $1. And the world starts closing in on you. And it's a mental game.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And I couldn't imagine, you know, just a few years ago selling cars when there was no inventory.
Yeah, impossible.
Yep. No, I was GMing a store during that time, and it made it really tough. It was just, you had to really just rely on, equity mining with, you know, leases and stuff like that. And it wasn't easy. I'm really, really thankful to not be in the auto industry anymore.
Let's come back to that.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, by the way, there's a good reason that this book in particular was, it's directly correlated to my career in the auto industry.
So dad tells you to go work somewhere else. Did you ever go back and work for dad?
I did, after a couple of years of working my way up at another.
And where were you on the board at these dealerships you were selling at? Were you top 5?
Yeah, top 5.
Ever won?
No. I had other things, music and you know, partying and things like that. So I was just a good salesman, but not the best.
And so then you go and work for dad. And what position do you take when you go work for him?
I started at selling cars.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then how does that progress?
Finance. And then I was an absolute killer in finance.
And then GM,
Sales manager.
sales manager.
Sat at the desk. You know, the thing about the auto industry is it's a great place to make a lot of money. It's a time suck. It's an energy suck. Usually a showroom is a haven of mediocre accomplishment. I think there's a lot of arrogance. And I'm guilty of it. I was the most arrogant of them all. You know, when I got into finance, you know how it is. You know, guys, closers, like that whole mentality. It's just douchey.
Yeah, it's super douchey. It always has been.
It is.
But it is. It's how people get motivated.
No, 100%. That whole, like, I love sales. But I like the connection in sales. I like the vulnerability. I like the decision-making processes and helping guide people with the right intention.
And the relationship ongoing.
Well, yeah, ideally you have a driveway customer, right? It's like the Wolf of Wall Street sales to me. And I was guilty of it, right? But then when you have a wake-up call in your life and you're like, this isn't right. The way people talk about customers and behind closed doors. Every single person in the auto industry is probably guilty of it at some way, shape, or form. You know, calling people with poor credit roaches and things like that. Like it's just lame.
Yeah, it lacks empathy.
You don't know what's going on in that person's life.
So you end up working for Dad. How does that resolve or end?
I mean, my father and I have a really great relationship, and I look up to him. He's my hero. But when we talk about in terms of self-sabotage, addiction, alcoholism, and things like that, you know, a lot of times, addicts, alcoholics, like we're really talented, we're really smart, funny, you know, charming, all of that stuff, but we can't ever get out of our way, and that was how it was, you know. I grew up in a family that drinking was kind of normal, but I always had to take it one step
Did Dad
further.
always have a drink with dinner?
I think it was more binging, you know.
Was it related to stress or just fun?
Well, that's what we say, right? Work hard, play hard. You know, the auto industry is stressful, you know, divorce ridden, all of it.
So you're making good money working for Dad.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You're partying
my off.
But inside you feel what?
When you're in it, you're trying to do everything you can to tell yourself that you're normal, right? Or that's what you're looking for, is some sense of normality, some sense of like, this is just how we are and this is just what we do, right? And that may be true in the moment, but then when you wake up at 7 o'clock the next morning and you have shakes and you have to have a drink before you go into the showroom, that's not normal. Right. But you convince yourself that it is. So when you start to.
Because the car business is very much about you live and die every day. And whatever you got to do to get yourself together, you got to live and die every day. Right. There aren't too many industries like that.
No. And then, you know, just monthly.
And so literally, how old are you when you're having a drink at 7 a.m?
Again, this was like, you know, it's on again, off again. 25 to 34.
I had one experience like that when I was going through my divorce. I would go to this Korean spa on Sundays and do the sauna, cold dunk, get a massage, kind of a thing. I was drinking a bottle of vodka a day.
Okay.
And I remember I was there. I went into the sauna or whatever, and I was sitting waiting for the masseuse to call me, and I was shaking, and I instantly was like, oh, I need a drink. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. One, there was nowhere I could drink. Two, I'd never experienced that, but I knew exactly what it was because I had the instant craving for a drink, knowing that the drink would make it stop. And it scared me to death. And then I kind of realized that I couldn't just stop cold turkey. I had to wean myself off, which was even more of a mental game. Like, I just realized how low I really was.
Yep.
And how much I was trying to numb what I was really feeling with
Correct. Yeah, so that, and especially when you're going through, and I've also been through a divorce, it's whenever you're going through like any instance of trauma, you're looking for some sort of false sense of present moment. So whether it's, getting over the past, you're worried about what's going to happen, or you're trying to make that moment currently better, you start playing that kind of cat and mouse with yourself. You talk about Jekyll and Hyde in I Am Leader, and a lot of times that's where we find ourselves.
And so what was that shadow that you were hiding, or what was the unconscious thing going on underneath?
So it's funny. I'm currently writing my book about this.
What is it called?
What's
the working title?
Working title, subtitle is "Create a Life You Don't Need a Substance to Enhance."
Oh, I like that.
It's about thriving in sobriety and not just being sober.
And so you were going to say what the underlying shadow was.
So I had a great childhood, right? I had a wonderful childhood, great parents, loving, all of it. And for whatever reason, I could never feel comfortable in my own skin, right? I wrote this like narrative about myself that was completely untrue. And the more uncomfortable you get, the more you feel like you need to numb, or at least to do anything to feel some sort of like comfort about yourself.
And so why do you think you didn't feel comfortable?
I was a fat kid. I was incredibly talented, but not like I never like took one thing and just excelled at it. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, I'm going to take up skateboarding, and I'm going to take up, playing punk rock, and it was like always like, I'd pick up new hobbies, and I was like good, but I also always felt that my intention for that was never like because I really enjoyed it. I feel like my intention was always to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you do that, you know what I mean? Like, and I can't pinpoint like a moment of trauma. It does, the moment of trauma really doesn't exist. I got in a really terrible boating accident with my brother. But I had a lot of support back then, growing up in the church and stuff like that. So I've never been able to really pinpoint like a traumatic moment in my life that would have caused me to be that way. So the only thing I can think of is it's like this perpetual feeling of like discomfort, and then repeating the same habits over and over and over again to make yourself feel that way, to where that's just what your new programming becomes. Because I get people who like lost a relative, right? Or something happens in their life. They go through a divorce, and like the divorce is what sends them into a spiral. But there was never anything like that. It was always just my actions caused those moments of trauma to send me into a further spiral. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Like, I think, in a way, we're all addicts to something, but the thing that we're addicted to more than anything else is the sense of belonging and fitting in. And if you don't feel like you belong or you fit in, then you're not human in a way. Like, you almost dehumanize yourself with that feeling. And so, trauma or not, that is a very powerful way to drive yourself crazy.
Well, the most messed up part about it is how badly we want to fit in, yet we also want to escape.
Well, because it's hard to fit in when you don't feel like there's a place, right?
Right.
So, the escape is a reaction to the learned helplessness.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Okay, so you're working for Dad. Do you get in trouble, or what happens?
I've been in trouble several times. I think COVID was probably like the worst thing that could have happened for me and for everybody, right? Like, I'm not special, but having that, if you remember dealerships during COVID where, A, B teams, you had a lot of time. You had a lot of time at home.
And so the time is the scariest thing because you can't keep your mind busy.
Right.
Now you can look in the mirror.
Think about it. If you're in the auto industry and you don't have to be in the showroom, what the hell do you have to do? It's not like there's stuff to work on, right? Follow up. Okay.
Yeah, it all gets very quick and easy.
Right.
And then you have time.
Right.
And so what happens to you when you have that time? What's going on in your mind?
It was a lot of people would say like, oh, we're quarantining, right? And then alcohol sales skyrocketed, and the people that you're around are all partying too. So now it's quarantine. You have a lot of free time, and the world's ending, so it's time to party, and people are drinking. At least you think that everybody's getting fucked or getting messed up, right? So and then you're an addict on top of all of it. And at that time, I didn't even know that I was really an addict, even though I totally did. Like, you're going to lie to yourself. You're going to find every way to like tell yourself that you're normal, even if that means like taking yourself out of a friend group and putting yourself in a friend group that makes you feel more normal. It grows as it goes. And just the more that I would do that, the more you'd start to realize that this isn't normal.
And so what is that low point?
Which one? I joke, my birthstone is rock bottom.
It's funny. Sad but funny.
I went through a divorce. I had an affair.
During COVID?
I was a year into my marriage. We had just bought a new home. And
you're working at the dealership?
Yep. And met a woman in the same friend group that I didn't know was in my league. And I had a beautiful wife, but we had issues before we got married and stuff. So
what do you mean by issues?
Infidelity on her end and a little bit, not as much.
See, there was a lot of chaos.
A lot of chaos.
Okay.
So
to celebrate the chaos, you decided to get married?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like any good like addict codependent, you have to.
Okay, and then what happens?
A year into our marriage, someone expresses interest that I never thought would ever be interested in me, and like any good codependent, I latched.
So then how does the wife find out?
I tell her.
And you're in love with this other girl?
Oh yeah.
You can't not be with her.
Oh yeah, no.
Okay, so you sit the wife down and what?
I think she kind of knew. I wasn't very quiet. And I said that I'm seeing someone else, and that I'm going to move out and move in with her.
And then how did that go over?
Splendid. No, it was a disaster.
Wow. Okay, so you tell her, everything blows up, and now you're moving in with the girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving in with the girlfriend, is that just a party? You just party more?
Yeah, party more. And I would bounce back and forth.
And was there guilt?
There's always guilt. There's always guilt. And looking back at it, I was a piece of shit. But you just don't, like, you justify everything in your head. You justify your actions. Plus you're polluted with the substances. Plus you're, clouded with new love and all that other stuff. You think you're doing everything right in the moment. But any normal person would look at you like, what are you doing?
Is the relationship with the girlfriend based on partying?
Looking back at it, yeah. There were intentions about, like, she was really successful. I was making, I was pretty successful myself. And she had 2 kids that were around the same age as my son. And it was like, blend the families and and like there was like this whole thing. But, then the weekend would hit and we would be out doing pretty wild stuff. Maintaining our life, totally. And then we bought a home together while I was still selling my home and going through my divorce. It happened really fast. I mean, we're talking like 4 months. This all happened. When you have very little consequences growing up with unlimited resources, you can do a lot of damage quickly.
How long are you with the girlfriend?
About a year.
A year?
Yeah. Yep, about a year. And we had trust issues, obviously. I got my first DUI, which was a really messed up situation. They always are, but where we were camping up north, and I had to, work on a Saturday, And her and the kids went up north to this like campground in northern Michigan. I met her up there and I was drinking the whole entire time. And then when we got up there, my ex-wife's friend sent her text messages of what is doing, behind closed doors and stuff. And then that blew up in my face and we got in an argument. And I got in the car and I took off and pulled out right in front of a cop. And he pulls me over. He knew who I was. He knew who she was. And he was like, dude, I don't want to do this, but I have to arrest you. So he arrests me. And that was my first DUI. And if in the auto industry, a DUI is a pretty big deal, especially if you want to be a dealer, and especially if you want to be a GM dealer. So in my eyes, like everything's going to fall apart. Everything's done. And your first DUI is a slap on the wrist. It's funny how the statistics are pretty crazy when you get your first one, how fast most people get, or not most people, but a lot of people get their second one.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because it's very little consequence, a little bit of.
So in your mind, you're like, oh, that wasn't a big deal.
And then you think about all the times that you've drank and drove and not gotten in trouble. Right. So
it's
you're like
that was random.
Yeah, it was random. It is what it is. Slap on the wrist. My attorney made it go away for the most part. Obviously, it's still on my record.
So then how long till you get the second one?
About 8 months. And the second one was really messed up.
How does that one go down?
The second one resulted in a be on the lookout for a suicidal person helicopter chase.
Ooh. So how do we get to that point?
Long weekend of using party drugs. So the store that I ran is like a rural Chevrolet store. And every morning I would go through, we had like a drive-through car wash, and I'd always go through the car wash, and then I would back into my spot in front of the showroom. And after a long weekend of partying and dealing with like just some trust issues back and forth with my, at that time, fiance, I went to park and then I just took off. And my guys that were all in the showroom were like, dude, where did Justin go? He just like took off. So a couple of the managers are calling me and I'm not picking up. And so they call her and she's calling me, I'm not picking up. And I was just in my head, I don't really know what I was doing. And a lot of times, and I've dealt with depression, anxiety, suicide, and stuff like that before. A lot of times you really can't put your finger on why you're doing what you're doing. You're just doing things. And it's a scary moment. Suicide is a very intimate experience. And when you're actually in it and that's where you're planning to go, it's something you fantasize about. It's something that and this is just me, but I've talked to numerous people on the topic of suicide, and a lot of people have agreed with me that yeah, you really get intimate with the idea. And I was falling like really like into that trap, and you would just do things that are totally out of character, that aren't like you, and this was one of those cases. So I started driving back up north. And I drove for like 2 hours.
Now, what is up north?
Honestly, nothing. But
so you're just windshield time, escape, don't know why you're doing it.
Right.
Okay.
Drinking and using drugs.
Is your phone ringing?
The whole entire time.
And you're ignoring it.
Ignoring it.
And you're thinking, I don't want to talk to anybody.
I don't want to talk to anybody.
And like you said, it's very intimate.
Yes.
And now, are you thinking about suicide?
Yeah.
And how are you thinking that you're going to do it?
It's funny because I never really it was like, and until the final one, I just kind of was like, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to put myself into a catatonic state.
And so then you're just driving.
Yeah. So I'm driving and I'm using like an insane amount of nitrous oxide. Like if I even told you when I did end up getting pulled over, when they opened the door, like nitrous canisters like fell everywhere, all over the side of the highway. It was wicked looking. And I was just putting myself into like basically psychosis. And then, I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not. It was like one of those things where I was like, we'll see what happens.
When you see the Christmas lights behind you,
What's funny, because I was getting chased for like probably 25, 30 minutes and I didn't even know I was getting chased.
Oh,
And
so you're out.
I was out of it.
How do you even drive?
It's funny. I didn't
Automatic pilot?
Well, it's funny because my attorney, kind of was like, well, they didn't really have a reason to pull you over other than the fact that it was called in the bolo. Let me rephrase that. There was no reason to ask if I was under the influence because there was no indication that I was.
What's a bolo?
Be on the lookout.
So they're following you for 20, 25 minutes.
Yep.
Do you remember the moment when you realized they were following you?
Yeah, they pulled up next to me because it was a 2-lane highway. So they had an opportunity to pull up next to me. And then I saw, and it was actually like an undercover truck. It was interesting because I'd never even seen a cruiser like that before. So they pull up next to me and the lights are on and I'm like, is this for me? Like I didn't know. I was gone, but mentally gone, but still I could move, right? And I could like think, but it was what it was. It's an interesting high. So I pull over and they have guns drawn. Like it's serious. It's like really, really serious. And they're like, get out of the car, get out of the car. And they're calling me by my name. And I'm like, how the hell do they even know who I am? Like I don't know that someone called it in. I have no idea why I'm getting pulled over. So they're like, get out of the car, Justin, get out of the car. And I'm like a little scared, but I'm also like, well, what the hell is this? So I get out of the car and then it gets really calm. And they're like, hey, is everything okay? I'm like, well, not anymore, right? No, nothing's good. But and the officers were really cool. They were really great. But so they're like, hey, listen, you have family and friends that are concerned about you. And I was like, oh yeah, well, no, everything's good. I just needed to take a drive. I was just having a morning. I'm like, okay, totally. And they were like, we just need to just run your stuff real quick, just make sure you're all set to go and we'll let you go on your way. You seem fine. So they run my license and they see that I'm on probation. And when you're on probation, then they got to start asking questions. So they ask if I've been drinking. They asked me to blow into a breathalyzer and boom, that was it. I get locked up again in Northern Michigan. Second time in a year.
Is it scarier this time?
This time, yeah, because at this point now I'm like labeled a danger to society. I had like a $50,000 bail.
Who do you call?
Because family was called it in, because she called it in, everybody was in the loop of what was going on. So I didn't have to call anybody.
Was dad in the loop?
Yes.
So you go to jail, then $50,000 bail, you post bail, who picks you up?
Well, that's actually, I haven't actually thought about that in a long time. So I had my truck, but my truck was impounded. So, and it was like impounded like a half hour away. So I got out and they gave me my stuff back and my keys and stuff and told me where my truck was. So I saw a dude that was picking someone else up or dropping someone else off, and he was tatted up, kind of looked like a punk rocker. I was like, yo, homie, like, any chance you can give me a ride to my truck? And he was like, yeah, bro, no problem. And I jumped in his truck and just a random guy took me to my truck and then I drove home.
Then what happens?
I get home and obviously there's trust issues, there's concern, there's a lot of things that are going on. She was my fiance at the time. We decide that we should probably separate, stay engaged, but we never dated. We literally I went boom, boom, like right from one home to the next, one person to the next. And so, she wanted me to get like a condo close by. We had dogs, we had a beautiful home. I mean, brand new built home. Like it was a lot to give everything up to have to like move out of this, what I like went in my eyes, right? I worked really hard for because I went through a divorce and an affair and all the back and forth and the fighting and you know, and it wasn't all fighting. Obviously there was a lot of great things between the two of us, but it wasn't healthy, that's for sure. But looking back at it again and keeping in mind, like I wasn't there. Like I wasn't the man that I am today. So I'm a victim. My ego's through the roof. I finally agree that yes, it's time to that I should get my own place for a little bit. I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it. You know, we're gonna stay engaged. We're gonna work through this. And I decided to get a condo on the 32nd floor downtown Grand Rapids above a 4-story nightclub. I figured that's a great idea. And she's livid. She's like, can't you, like we had a home in the suburbs. She's like, can't you just get like a townhouse right here and like close by? And I was like, no, if I'm doing this, I got to do it my way. And she's like, that's a terrible idea, Justin. Like, you know, you can't handle living right now in a place like that. So I, you know, stubborn, I did it anyways. And that became like a cell to me. That was like an isolation chamber. You know what I mean? Like being up there by myself. At this time, I'm now also in drug court, which I don't know if you're familiar with what drug court is, but you might as well be in jail.
Why?
You're 100% an asset of the state. You are at their beck and call. It's hard. It's very, very hard. A lot of people they'll just go do time instead of be free and do drug court. They'd rather just do their time so they don't have to go through drug court.
Well, what are they doing to you? Like they're randomly testing
random.
you?
You have to visit a judge every week and like get in front of a judge and like everybody else that's in drug court and state your case every single week. You have to call in every single day. You don't have a driver's license, right? So I was so fortunate to be able to have my court switched to the county that I lived in instead of 3 hours north. It was a whole thing.
Are they randomly testing you?
Oh yeah.
And did you go clean?
No, I found drugs that they couldn't test for. Of course, I'm a drug addict.
Which one? What?
Nitrous oxide. That was and then I was prescribed to Adderall, and I knew, like, keeping in mind, like, you know, I know how my body works. I lost 100 pounds, got in the best shape of my life. Like, I know how to like dilute myself to piss within the range of what I needed to. I was a professional. For a fucking professional.
How often do the suicidal thoughts come into mind?
Every day, all day.
Really?
Mm.
Every day, all day?
Oh yeah. That was, at that point, that was the worst that it ever gotten. I was falling apart entirely. I was able to get away with having to do jail time, but I had to do jail time for the probation violation from the DUI prior. I was able to negotiate something to allow me to do weekends so I could continue to run the stores and go in on a Friday night, stay Saturday and Sunday, and then get discharged and then come back from north. And this is again 3 hours north. So we had an offsite sale, and I was running the offsite sale with my partner, and then Friday came. And my brother agreed to take me up to northern Michigan, 3 hours north, and then pick me up when I got discharged, which I was getting discharged at like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, because that's the way hours work with jail, is like a day counts for a day and a half. I think basically that's how the math kind of works out. So I do my first weekend, and I'm getting discharged. And leading up to that too was just like, you know, just the worst. It was like, oh my God, I got to go through all of this, drive all the way up there. You know what I mean? Like when you're in that mode, and especially when you're very hooked on a drug and you got to like, it wasn't even like the jail time to me. It was like being away from like the nitrous and the pills and stuff like that, that I was like, how the hell am I going to get through this? You know?
Because you can't numb yourself.
No. You're sitting there in your feelings, and when you're doing weekends, it's like isolation, which I was isolating anyways. In the grand scheme of things, like I should have been able to be like, well, it's no different than what I'm doing. I just don't have any drugs. And it wasn't like I was doing drugs that you would detox from. So but to me, it was like the worst case scenario. So I'm getting discharged. They're giving me my stuff back, and I pass out, like at the desk, like while I'm sitting there with the correction officer. Pass out, piss myself, wake up in an ambulance. No clue. They take me to a hospital up in northern Michigan. Very limited resources. No way to really like run tests on me. Basically, give him fluids, make sure he's okay, and we'll send you on your way. So I go there, no clue. And my brother gets up there at that point, and he picks me up. I get discharged from the hospital now. You know what's funny? In Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about jails, institution, and death. Like that's the option for an addict and alcoholic, right? Jails, institution, and death. And all three happened to me in one day. Released from jail, ended up in the hospital, which would be an institution. And then on our drive home, my brother and I are very close, and we're like carbon copies of each other. So we're driving back, listening to Howard Stern, and normally we'd be laughing, talking about it, and I'm dead silent. And in my head, I'm like, that's it. Tonight's the night. I just got out of the hospital. I have no idea why I'm passing out. I have to go back up here and do another weekend like this. I'm terrified. And the whole ride home, I'm just silent, and I'm planning it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put myself in psychosis, and I'm gonna just end it. I'm gonna blow my brains out. So we get back. My brother drops me off at my building, and instead of walking into my building, I go to my truck because that's where my gun was. And that's where I also had like all my vehicles had like like nitrous setups and everything. Like I was like I didn't want to be away from the drugs. So I was like, I'm gonna go to my truck, and I'm just gonna like lock myself in my truck and do it in my truck. And in that time, my brother noticed that I didn't like, he was like, he saw me go into the parking garage as opposed to going into the building. And he was like, that's weird. So of course he's calling me, and I'm not picking up, and I'm in my truck, and I took my shirt off for some reason. I don't know why I took my shirt off, but I don't know. I have no idea why I did that. And I'm like, he's blowing my phone up over and over and over again. Now my mom's calling me, and everybody's calling me, and I'm just like, phone's vibrating in the center console, and I'm like, this is it. I'm done. And then my truck door swings open, and my brother's standing there, and he's bawling. This is my little brother. And he says, Justin, he's like, we're going to get you help. And first things first, I had to go to the real hospital because the Northern Michigan hospital wasn't giving me what I need. We didn't know what was really wrong with me. So I go to the Grand Rapids Hospital, which is like a Mayo Clinic. It's the medical mile. It's a beautiful hospital, and they run all the tests. They put me in a room, and they find out that I've given myself like insane amounts of blood clots in my lungs. So I spend a week. Getting that cleared up, and then I got to go to the psych ward. So then I go to the psych ward, and while I'm in the psych ward, my family's trying to find me a place to go to treatment, and real treatment. And they picked a place in Huntington Beach, California. My brother saved my life. So the plan was to spend 3 months in treatment and go back and take my life back and take my life over again. And win my fiance back and become a new man and I'm gonna be sober and I'm gonna be the best.
This is what you're thinking during rehab?
Oh yeah. Total future trip, and like this is gonna be it. I'm gonna come back and be the best thing that our auto group has ever seen. Like I'm gonna really do this. I put so much pressure on myself to be that.
If your brother was sitting here right now, what would he say was his sense? Like, how did he know? How did he know not to leave you alone?
I think the silence. I think the fact that I didn't walk into my building and went a different direction, it caused him to.
Do you know how far away he got before he turned around?
I really don't. I've never asked him that.
How much time passed?
25 minutes.
Man, isn't it crazy how one little thing, like just one little thing, changes everything?
Yeah. Yeah. So, month 1 and 2, it was like love bombing her. Like, I'm coming back. I'm going to be the best man for you. Yeah. Oh yeah. Now because I wanted it at that point. At that point, my family was behind me. Like everyone was behind me. I'm gonna get clean. I'm gonna do it right this time, and I'm gonna be the best version of myself, my most elite self. And I had that in my head, but I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it to salvage the relationship, to salvage my position at my family's company. I was gonna like it was. I had to do it for that.
So for the most part, then rehab was like a speed bump. Like you were committed to it.
Well, yeah, if I was going to go to rehab for 90 days and be away from my comfort zone and my family and my everything, then I'm going to I'm going to do it right, you know? And I was excited about it, you know, but at the same time, when your intention is to salvage a relationship and not do it for yourself, it's just a recipe to relapse, especially if things don't go right. If your intentions are to have an outcome in your recovery, and it doesn't go your way, it's a bad situation.
So just so I understand, if you attach your recovery to an outcome that you can't control, which is a relationship being fixed, that's a recipe for relapse.
100%.
But if you are just committed to recovery
and doing it for yourself,
okay. So there was no fixing it. Do you still have the apartment?
No.
So where are you living?
My family came. What's that?
Where are you living when you go back home?
We're not there yet. I never did. I stayed in Huntington Beach.
Oh, so you never went back. You're thinking this during rehab.
Yeah, that was my plan.
I'm sorry. I thought
No, it's okay. It's okay. I didn't offer enough clarity there. Yeah, month 1 and 2, it was.
I'm going to fix it. I'm going to get her back.
Yep, I'm going to get her back.
Are you communicating with her?
She turned it off. She blocked me. She blocked me out. And like,
do they tell her to do that?
My family
or the rehab?
My family did.
Okay.
And I'm sure you didn't have to. You didn't
Wasn't
have to
hard.
Twist her arm to make her do that, right? Yeah. So she did, and then when I realized like it's done, right? Like she ghosted and was out. It was, and by the way, looking back at it now, and since I've talked to her. Since then and since now, was the best thing she ever could have done for me, right? So by month 2, I realized that like I was doing it for the wrong reasons. Now I'm like involved in the rooms of AA. Now I'm building a network. Now I'm building friends and learning about recovery. And right, you sit around a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. Well, it works really well in that direction too.
And one of the things, or correct me if I'm wrong, that dramatically increases your chances of recovery is not going back to the same people, environment.
Yes.
Because your mind there's just automatic pilot everywhere that gets you too close to the feelings, the emotions or whatever it is that are connected to those habits, those bad habits.
Yeah, 100%. When you talk about an I Am Leader, when you talk about like, you know, your programming and things like that, well, if you can wipe that programming entirely clean and start fresh somewhere, you're going to have a much better likelihood.
New friends, new environment,
Everything.
new air,
Yep.
new sunlight, whatever. So towards between month 2 and 3, you start thinking maybe I'm not going back.
What I decided was I was going to start my program over. So, which was a very expensive decision.
So you're going to re-up for another 3 months.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Like, so when you go into rehab, there's clearly like a roadmap. By month 3, are you starting that roadmap over, or is there a month 4, 5, 6?
No, yeah. So and here's the thing. Because I was doing really well and I was like the model client of rehab, right? Like, cool. But no, I was really putting the work in. You know, I was working with an AA sponsor. I was active in the groups. I was, you know, showing up to all my caseworker things. I was getting more freedom. And, you know, I'm a 33-year-old, pretty successful dude. You know what I mean? Getting driven around by a 26-year-old kid in a van. You know what I mean? Like, it was very humbling, but at the same time, I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And so I was very active and I was really involved. So like I started getting more freedoms and I started to really like, put myself in the world of recovery. Like any addict would, like, you know, you start to, you know, if you're going to get addicted to something, you're going to go all in, right? Like I've never done like a half a bag of Coke, like, right? I never drank half a beer. So, you know, I'm going to go all in. So I went all in on my recovery. And as I got like more involved in it, I just started to fall in love with Huntington. So my program was like very like inpatient, outpatient. I had freedoms. I could go do things. I went to like Punk in the Park. I got to go to music festivals. Like, I had a really good trust built with them and they loved me. They absolutely loved me. I still am pretty involved with them to this day. In that time, my last month, I was like, you know what? After my program's done, I'm going to get like a VRBO or an Airbnb or something, and I'm going to stay for, you know, a few more months. I'm just going to, you know, extend my stay in Huntington. I really like it here. In that time, I was hanging out with some guys that were like normies. Like that's what we call it. It's like guys who can normally drink. And they were really great, like really cool guys. One of them's like super connected in Hollywood, stuff like that. And I met them in the gym and just built this really awesome friendship. Now, bear in mind, all of my friends out here only know me sober. They've never seen me fucked up. They've never seen me anything. So that's all they know. So I built this like really genuine connection.
And it's a reinvention in a sense.
100%. And you know, one of the most profound things that I've ever heard in recovery is the opposite of addiction is connection. And I fell in love with that. And I really love like connecting and pouring into relationships. And even when I was in it, I would still want to like pour into relationships, but just my intentions were different. So now I'm like making friends that are real connection, sharing real vulnerability and real just life. So I go out one afternoon and we're at this like cool like rooftop situation. And it's just me and like 3 other dudes and we're having a good time. They're having some drinks and stuff and I'm just sober and they know me. They're like, yeah, he's in rehab. Like I was really open about everything and have been ever since. And this woman walks in. Her name's Lizzie. And I see her from across the bar and she like walks in and walks right to our table and she's like old friends with these guys. And she sits down and I had no motive there. I thought she was beautiful. She was cool and whatever, but I had no motive. So, and I was like super vulnerable, super open. I was like, yeah, you know, I'm in rehab. Like you guys have fun, have your drinks and stuff. I got to go piss in a cup. Like, you know, like I was just like me, like it was like whatever. And you know, I got a curfew. I'm a man in my 30s. I got a curfew and all of this. And anyways, As the day kind of progressed, we went to a few other spots, and one of the guys dropped off, and then the next guy dropped off, and then it was me, another guy, and her. And the other guy was drinking pretty heavily at that point, you know, and we ended up at this little Italian restaurant right up the street from my sober living, which worked out really perfect because then I could like bail and go back to sober living. And he was at the bar, and he was like at that point pretty drunk. So I talked to her and I was like, "Hey, you want to grab some desserts and just get out of here?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'd love that." We ordered desserts. We bought some blankets from one of like the little tourist traps on Main Street in Huntington. And we went down to the beach, and we literally sat there right up until 11 o'clock, which is when I had to be back to drop and check in. And it was a really fantastic connection. And then, and then a month, we talked, and we started doing like little day trips when I was like allowed out. And it was just like a good friendship at first, right? But like it started getting romantic and things, and before you know it, I'm like, I really like this person. I want to see where this may go. And this is really interesting. It's really cool, actually. I don't know if it's interesting, but the guy who was drunk at the Italian restaurant, that was the last person there, texts me, and he's like, "Hey, it seems like you and Lizzie are really getting along." He says, I'm going to go to Thailand for 2 months. And he's like, "I got my apartment," and it literally was next door to that Italian restaurant, right on Main Street, right by the pier. He's like, I want to see what happens with you and Lizzie. Cause he's like old friends with her. They traveled to Thailand together, and he's an older guy. And, he's like, I'm interested to see what happens with you and Lizzie. She seems like she really likes you. I don't know if you're thinking about staying here or going back to Michigan, but if you decide to stay here, you can take my apartment for while I'm gone in Thailand. And I was like, okay, cool. So I get out of rehab. My rehab building was 6th Street and Olive. Okay. And the apartment was on 6th Street in Maine. So 2 blocks. So like when I packed up my stuff in rehab, I literally just walked to the apartment, and I didn't have a car. I had nothing. And so he says I could stay there for 2 months and figure things out. So things started getting more serious with Lizzie and I, and we're just having a good time. And I remember I was like walking by myself down the pier, and I was listening to Turnstile, as a matter of fact. And I remember I turned around and I looked like back at Huntington. I said, "This is my life now." And I made the decision. I'm leaving everything. My family, my business, I'm leaving everything. I'm never going to go back. And the next day, Steve calls me and says, "I'm staying in Thailand, have my apartment, have everything in it. I'm not coming back. Just put my personal stuff, bring them up to my office in Long Beach, and it's yours." It was like everything worked out so amazing. A year later, I marry Lizzie. Reality sets in, and I had to get a job, right? So
reality sets in after that moment, that decision
to stay.
Yeah.
In like a month. So I had a month where I had like my fun.
Do you think that decision saved you?
Yeah.
I
don't think it saved me. I think it helped me create the most incredible life that I have today.
Do you think that there's a higher power involved in that moment?
If you would have asked me then, I would have said no. If you asked me today, yes.
What do you think that is?
Whether God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, I think when you start making decisions and you put and you invest time into yourself and you start to grow, like they say, like your vibe attracts your tribe, right? Or whatever it may be. I feel like I was just in a situation that I invested so much time and energy into myself that I was able to start to attract what I wanted in my life.
And it was just clear.
So I got a job at a dealership as a sales manager, and that was at a store that was a Nissan store, and obviously chip shortage, and it just wasn't exciting. And Nissan is the most boring brand in the world. So I got a job at a Highline pre-owned store. And a really good job, a really, really well-paying job, and I killed it. But at that time, I decided I wanted to start my own personal brand. on Instagram. And I wanted to help guys that specifically guys in the auto industry. And keep in mind, like I went to college with a bunch of car dealer kids, right? I wanted to start a coaching business that helped guys that were working crazy automotive hours. I wanted to help them get fit and get their heads right and, you know, figure it out like I did.
When does the book come into play? So tell me that
This
story.
book?
Yeah.
This book was, I started, that's funny that you asked that. I started reading that when I was going through all my stuff before I got in trouble, like right in the middle of DUIs.
So who recommends it?
My ex.
So what is the context of her recommending it?
She had read Love Unfucked and Unfuck Yourself, and knew that this book was out there about self-sabotage. And, you know, she recommended 2 books that I read at that time, and one was on codependency and the other one was on self-sabotage. And the reason it was so profound in my life is because until it was pointed out, the narrative that you build in your head, this type of stuff doesn't exist. It's not couldn't be me, right? When I started to realize that I was self-sabotage, it was like it now existed. It didn't necessarily mean that it was going to go away, or that I even cared if it did, but I knew that it existed. Now you can start to identify things.
There's a new architecture.
Correct. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
You kind of bang into some walls every once in a while and you're like, hey, well, maybe I'm being a victim, but really I do own some responsibility here. Or what were those walls you would run into?
So I think what it does is I had no intention of like actually at the time when I started reading that, I had no intention of actually changing. I had the intention of talking about changing, so people would believe me. And I had and then it was like I became cognizant of personal development, right? To where it was like easy to talk about. And you know, and keep in mind, like I had like gone through years prior, you know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I went through like my massive body. Like I used to be incredibly obese, you know, and went through like a huge transformation, you know, physical transformation. So it was like now personal development has been introduced in my life, but it wasn't, it wasn't authentic.
Yeah.
But at least it starts to plant a seed in you.
So how does Stop Doing That by Gary John Bishop change your life?
So I think that's the main reason, is that it introduced me to the concepts of personal development, and it woke me up. And it's funny because when you asked what book changed my life, there's so I read. I've always read a lot.
Yeah, you say you read like 2 or 3 a month.
I read a lot of books a month. And, you know, I could have done something more generic, like Carnegie's book, you know, but then I was like, that's kind of boring to talk about. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then, you know, Good to Great, but I didn't want to sit down here and talk about a business book. And I figured like there's a story behind this.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
Thanks.
So this, I marked this page. So the quote in here is, this is on page 118. You've become so fascinated by your own temporary solutions, so seduced by the mirage of the future that you cannot see it's an illusion.
It's an illusion. Yeah.
So now at the place that you're in, are you getting your energy and fulfillment from mentoring and sponsoring other people that come from where you came from?
Yeah. So, I have my fitness coaching program called Justin Wenzel Fitness, and I have a ton of clients there, but my real fulfillment is in my community. And, my community is called JWX, and, basically all people that have coaching businesses that, we all like grow together and, build each other up, collaborate with each other, do podcasts together. And I started it just kind of off of like a dream like that I had, that I wanted to find a bunch of people with crazy stories that have been through it all and that wanted to take their journey and build a business out of it and a personal brand out of it. And I got really good at personal branding. I built a massive audience, and have been able to do wonderful things like this. This is probably my favorite thing that I've gotten to do since I've started JWX actually.
Man, you got a story that, the thing about you telling your story is it makes other people feel like they're not alone, and that what they're facing, that feeling of not fitting in or whatever it is they're feeling, isn't as odd as it feels when you're feeling alone. Right?
Totally.
Like, your brother saving you is in a lot of ways the same thing as somebody feeling like somebody cares. Because really, when you're feeling that alone, what you feel like is nobody understands or cares. Right?
100%. Yeah. And when you're in it, there's no lonelier feeling than that.
So when you tell your story and it connects with the right person, I don't know if there's anything more powerful than that.
The saying is, we recover out loud for those who suffer in silence.
Makes sense.
Suicide takes out way too many men in America.
Yeah, it's way up.
You know the Elhart Auto Group? No. Big auto group. They were brothers. And so it's Wayne and John. And one of the brothers ended up taking his life. And the other brother wrote a book called Be Kind. And it's pretty fantastic. It's funny because like my dad, it was old school, mental health, just be a man.
Put some dirt on it.
Yeah. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And then once that happened with Elhart and then what happened with me, that year that I was, that Christmas that I was in rehab, so our store, about 900 employees at all of our stores collectively. And he bought everybody that book, Be Kind.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
What do you think of the cigar?
It's wonderful.
Crazy, right?
Oh, I love it.
You can take one too if you want to go.
Thank you.